Okay, so hello again, colleagues. We are back now for three three different presentations this afternoon. And the first one is from Kevin, Kerry, and Greg at Liverpool John Moores on courageous collaborations. So I'm not sure which one of you I'm handing over to, but the floor is yours, Kevin.
Let's start. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. The us being my colleagues Greg Thompson, Deputy Director of HR, Kerry Robinson, Senior Teaching Fellow in Leadership, and me, Kevin Flynn, a Senior Lecturer in Executive Education at Liverpool John Moores University. We often find as academics that our senior leadership team might go out to have development programs delivered from outside the organisation. And when a need came up in LGMU recently, myself and a couple of academic colleagues said, we could do that. And Greg, as the procurer, said, we'll come and tender along with the rest. We won the tender, so today I'm going to share with you some insights from the ongoing development programme that we've called Courageous Collaboration. It's a whole system leadership programme co-designed with the combined executive and university leadership teams at LGMU. The focus is not on individual leadership development, but it's on collective cultural transformation. We're looking to develop the capacity for living with and acting into uncertainty, where learning is a collective responsibility. We're building the path in the walking of it. So let's begin with a provocation. When did your institution last ask its leaders to be comfortable with being uncomfortable? So as we all know, higher education is operating in a climate of uncertainty, structural transition, increasing complexity, and cultural disruption. And being able to lead through discomfort is essential, not optional. So we're opening spaces where, in contrast to conventional thinking, it's okay to be psychologically unsafe.
So at LGMU, we recognised there was a need. Our leaders were being asked to navigate rapid cultural and structural change while also delivering what we've termed internally in our organisation Strategy 2030. And what we recognise is the same pattern is happening across the sector. We've got leaders that are excellent, often within their silos. But what we're recognising in this programme is strategy lives in the spaces between those silos, hence our response. So I'm going to hand to Greg. Yeah.
Thanks, Kerry. So as Kev said, I was asked to commission a programme that did this, and this was coming off the back of a transformational change process at the university, which had moved us from 5 faculties to 2. And that had seen our executive leadership decrease in size. And it also had the aspiration of moving decision making to the appropriate levels in the organisation, moving from an organisation that were fed everything to do as executive leadership team into one that used its leadership team, school directors, individuals in those types of director roles to feel empowered to make the decisions to shape the organisation and what they want to be. We'd already done development for our executive leadership team and went down sort of that traditional approach. We'd gone out to procurement, we'd found an external partner, and we delivered a very successful programme with them. But when it came to the university leadership team, we were faced with the choice. Do we do the same again? We could bring in an external. We could approach it in a similar way, or do we look to do something different? And like everyone's strategy, leadership plays a large part in ours, and the idea of being an adaptive leadership team, one that can drive change and one that can work collaboratively. So having seen the interest from our colleagues in Liverpool Business School, the idea was, could we build something collaboratively? Could we work with our internal experts to develop a programme that gives us sustainability and longevity with it? And that's what we've set out to do. I'll talk a bit towards the end of the presentation about my experience as a participant, because I'm always conscious of wearing a number of hats in this. But going into this idea, it's really opened up an opportunity for a sustained partnership, but one that we're all invested into, because those delivering and facilitating the programme also have to exist within the culture the senior leadership team built. So I'll pass back to Kev to talk a bit more about the details of it.
It was interesting to just go through the presentations we've been along this morning with University Heroes model. I think hopefully drawing on your own heroes, ecosystems, systems thinking, where there's no map, and that transformative leadership as well. So the program is built on a central belief. Courage is not a personality trait or a competency. It's a collective practice. And this involves stepping into discomfort, confronting inherited norms, challenging those unhelpful patterns and doing so compassionately, modeling the behaviours we want to encourage. And that courage grows through shared sense making, honest reflection and cross-boundary collaboration. And the philosophy underpins every part of the programme design, which Kerry's going to take you through now.
So one of the most distinctive features that we've talked about already of this programme is that it's internally delivered. So rather than being external consultants, this is LGMU's own executive education team who are part of the Liverpool Business School in LGMU. And so in that way, we're almost, as Kev describes, walking the path with others. So is that courageous? Is it getting us in the uncomfortable? Potentially, because we're sat there with our colleagues, we're operating with them. Greg's already described he is both the commissioner and a facilitator, so there's a lot of uncomfortableness in that. And what we've tried to do is align the development with our strategic priorities and our culture. And being internal, we recognise the culture. We're also building our internal capacity, so hopefully that we've got longevity here. And really conscious of psychologically safe spaces where leaders can be honest. And we're often contemplating in the comfortableness or uncomfortableness is it harder to be psychologically safe with those that you already work with and be totally honest, or with those that are external? So we're absolutely practicing this all the way through. And what it is ensuring that we've got a deep relevance to our lived organisational reality. So with the work being led from within, we believe it strengthens the ownership, it strengthens accountability, and hopefully we're building long-term cultural resilience. And how the programme works is set out in 4 elements, as you can see in this slide. We've got 4 core elements, which I'm just going to go into, and we're delivering this over a 9-month period. I've got to say, we're midway through it, so we haven't got our results as yet. We're starting to see some results, which we will talk about. So we've got large group interventions. These sessions bring together both the executive leadership team and the university leadership team to explore behaviours, relationships, mindsets that drive cultural change. It's where we've been surfacing tensions, where we've been revealing assumptions, and really starting to get into that grey zone of operating, where the information is complete and the structures are shifting. And the reason that we've put the picture on there in a large circle is actually we have been sat like that in parts of this programme to get the conversations going. When we come together, we're bringing together a mix of both academic and professional leaders, and intentionally we are mixing them together every time. That's either through quads or triads. That is to disrupt groupthink, build relationships, and to develop that systemic thinking. The quads work through challenges faced in our organisation, looking at why they matter and why ownership is often unclear. They work through the people, the processes and the relationships that are either influencing or constraining the process, together with those behavioural habits that keep the issue stuck. And so what we're working towards is small but testable shifts that could unlock movement in it. So it's about collaboration, and it's about getting leaders working beyond their functional boundaries. This is then supported by half-day sessions where we have external leaders that come in and bring fresh perspectives. So far, we've had someone else from another part of higher education, someone from health, and they're giving us examples of distributed leadership, collaboration, accountability, innovation, working across academic and professional boundaries. And what we're trying to do is take some learnings and apply that in our context. This is also supported with every individual in the programme has 4 confidential coaching sessions, which are centred around alignment, clarity, collaboration, and confronting what leaders may be tolerating. And the 3 bullet points there are showing you the framing that our coaches use for those sessions. We've termed it action learning sets, but in practice, this is probably more like group coaching. And this is where the peer support comes in, stretching each other, leaders examining their own reasoning, testing their ideas and practicing their new ways of working with the real institutional challenges that they've been talking about in the mixture of professional academic staff and discussion in that way. So I'm going to hand over to Greg to talk through what it might be like as a participant of the programme now.
Thanks, Kerry. I think the thing I would pick up is the uncomfortableness. I think, it's been sort of a constant theme, and that sort of sitting in a circle, being very open with each other, has been quite uncomfortable, both as a participant, but also someone commissioning the piece of work. Because I think it's clear to say we've not gone into this with an idea of what the final outcome looks like. We're asking the group to build it themselves. We're not giving answers. We're providing a scaffolding for people to reach those decisions. And that's uncomfortable. And people, would perhaps feel more comfortable with a program to just impart some knowledge, share some content with them. But that wouldn't get us to where we want to be on the whole systems approach. If I reflect on some of the benefits we've seen, it really came out when I was listening to Lee and Zach this morning. Well, real opportunity for coalitions to be built, the networks that are coming out and the social capital that's being developed by participants is fantastic to see. It's uncomfortable. It's not easy. But I think it's getting us to where we need to be organisationally. I think what is very apparent is we probably need more of it. We're perhaps ambitious in thinking how quickly we could move on some of this and developing that team. Kev, I'll pass over to you.
So I think one of the things that definitely we'd be saying is all the fantastic innovative programs that have been talked about all over the course of the day, we do them oftentimes for our students and for our corporate clients. We don't do them for our own senior leadership teams, and to be given the opportunity there is both sort of challenging as well as exciting as well. So we just want to leave you with a few sort of final questions, really, more than anything. So are we really working with the organisation as a system, as patterns of interaction between human beings? Or are we still dealing with a set of schools and departments? So those final questions to actually think about as we finish this session is, could your institution grow its leadership courage from within? What would it take to make discomfort a shared organisational practice and not an individual burden? And who in your organisational system is ready to step into that grey zone, the space where real change happens?
And I guess that leaves me with the few last words, really, is for us, courageous collaboration is not a programme outcome. We think it's a leadership choice made daily in the space between functions. So I guess we're offering some questions for you there. What use are you making of your internal experts? That's connecting back to some of the presentations that we've seen today. Could your institution develop leadership courage from within? What would it take to make comfort with discomfort a shared organisational practice? And who in your system is already ready to step into that zone? Because I guess finally, the wider challenge, we're all going to have strategies like 2030, like we've got at LGMU, and they're going to be delivered by leaders who are willing to work beyond those boundaries. So I guess what we're saying is this is an invitation to reimagine how we lead and how we lead together. And we'll close it there.
Fantastic. Thank you, all three of you. I think that has been a really interesting, well, it's provoked a lot of thoughts for me, and I'm assuming it's done that for many people listening in as well. Let me just see who has some thoughts or questions or anything to share on this session. Please either put something in the chat or put your hands up. And perhaps just while that's going on, I wonder if I might ask a question. Um, and that is you talked at the beginning about that kind of psychological unsafety.
Mhm.
But clearly, in order for this to be working, you must have put a lot of conditions in place so that it is safe enough for people to be able to challenge each other and to be as bold and courageous as you want them to be. So I wonder what those conditions might be.
I guess the first thing is thinking about the staffing of how we did this.
Mm.
So I guess just to say, all the coaches that we have are independent coaches. So we keep that individual confidentiality. So
Mm-hmm.
that creates some of that safety in that sense. In terms of facilitation, myself, Kev, and Melissa and Melissa's not here with us today, are the main facilitators of the programme. And what we did prior to the delivery of the programme was we offered out to participants to go and meet them and anything, because they were building the programme themselves. So straight away we worked on an individual level or a group level because we had group discussions. So we created those one-to-one contacts. We also did that with the executive leadership team, almost to the point where we almost felt like people were testing us before we got into there. So there was that kind of piece at first. And then I guess the other part to say is I'm fairly new into the organisation, as is Melissa. Kev is more long-standing than us, but still fairly, in terms of higher education, fairly recent. And I guess that helps because we've all got experiences away from here and brought that in to create that safety. But we also do a lot in the construction of the days and how we do that. And Kev, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, it might sound a bit disingenuous to say it's psychologically unsafe, sort of space. So I think there is an element though where psychological safety suggests that it's comfortable. It suggests that it's okay to speak up, that there aren't going to be any consequences. And I think what we are saying is we can't guarantee that what is said there won't be consequences to. All we can say that what we will do is we'll work with it in the room. So if anything does come up, we won't sweep it under the carpet. We'll work with it. And similarly, again, I think that one of the big things that is often said in conventional thinking is around everybody being aligned. And we know in every university, there are multiple cultures. So rather than thinking let's all align to the one culture, let's all align to a set of values, we work with the fact that actually there are differences in there as well, and we actually sort of bring those differences to the fore and think about them together. And it's safe enough to the extent that we actually have a compassion for each other, but we don't know where things will go once somebody actually opens their mouth.
Yeah, it sounds a really exciting and challenging space to work in, and for you to be brave in that space as well. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat, and I can see that Adele, who is U217, I think, is just noting that often in higher ed we don't use our own experts. Adele, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Let's just say it out. So, yes, I think that I just really picked up on that. We often reflect on that we call on external companies, we employ them in order to teach us, to train us, to deliver things for us when, we know that we have, in some cases, the very high expertise, world-leading expertise in all kinds of different disciplines. And obviously there's the mechanics of how people's time and workloads and remits and so on, which is why I'm assuming participating by formally bidding for the work then kind of resolved some of those kind of technical aspects. But yeah, it's just really struck me to hear that you'd done that. You'd actually done the thing which often appears so sensible that we ought to do more within our organisations.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that going through the procurement and actually having finances attached to it was really important. It couldn't be seen as, oh, this is just going to be in addition to what you've asked to do. It had to be the same as if we were commissioning it externally, to allow the facilitation. And the other thing I would add is I think I'd only feel confident to have gone down this route to the support of our Vice Chancellor. Because while we talk a lot about the psychological safety for the participants, for the facilitators, it's a huge risk as well. You're being asked to go in front of all of your senior leaders and deliver this session that is built on discomfort. And it was with the support of the executive team we felt more comfortable. But I do think being able to go down at least a quasi-tendering process or procurement process is important.
Fabulous. Thank you. And there's some other comments in the chat, but I am going to need to move us on to the next presentation. So, Kerry, Greg, Kevin, thank you again very, very much for that. I think it's given us a lot to think about in what we're doing, and brave to come here and talk about it today. And now we are on to Adele from University of Warwick, who is going to talk to us about nurturing leadership horizontally through their professional services excellence network. So, Adele, when you're ready, feel free to share.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah. So I'm presenting with Linda Sherwin, also my colleague from University of Warwick. So I think Linda's going to kick off the slides. Here we go.
Trying.
There we go.
That worked.
Yes, they're in present. We'll get it in the right mode.
I've lost everybody now, so I can't see everybody, but
that's great. Thanks, Linda. Okay, so thanks everybody, and really nice to meet you all here today. I'm Adele Brown, Director of Student Experience and Engagement at Warwick. I've been at Warwick for 4 years, and previously I was at De Montfort University, and then before that at Sussex. So overall, I've been working in professional services in universities for 25 years. Linda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Linda. I'm a Student Experience Programme Manager based within the Student Experience and Engagement Directorate. I've been at the university for about 6 years. I was previously based within the Wellbeing Directorate, and previous to that, taught in higher education and worked in other community mental health institutions as well. So that's my background.
Thanks, Linda. So today, yeah, if you move forward, Linda, fine. Thanks. We're going to be a double act here. We're going to talk you through the Professional Services Excellence Network that we created, and the impact that it's had and continues to have at the university. So if you move forward, Linda. Thanks. Thank you. So to start off with why I created the network. So I was employed at Warwick as the Director of Student Experience, and the role was a new role, and it was conceived as a role to have kind of horizontal influence across the organisation. So I didn't go in as perhaps a more typical Director of Student Services with a large team underneath me of all the different services, but it was more a role to hear the student voice, obviously to scan the horizon, to build and improve our services, but by working horizontally with those services. And one of the things I thought would really help me to achieve this would be to develop, as a leader, that soft power across the organisation by supporting, obviously befriending and backing all of the service staff across the organisation. So from a leadership perspective, this was very much to do with how do I get into all of these teams which don't sit under my authority, and help us all to work for the better student experience. We know that students' first point of reference is their academic department. That's where they go to university. They go there to do a course and to succeed. But at universities, there's this, wider community of people, thousands of people who all make up the community that those students live and work in. And as we've just heard in the other presentation, all of those people have an influence on, can make or break a student's day, the kind of interaction they might have with somebody, but also the way we set up our systems, programs, support services. All matters for the student experience, whether staff are completely hidden in a back office or whether they're on a front desk. So the why of starting the network was to really involve staff, knowing at Warwick, just as in the other organisations I worked in, that staff have a massive appetite to be involved, to understand the bigger picture and to be in the room. From a skills perspective, and again, it reflects what we've just been talking about, but we have every single professional skill within a university that probably exists. So among our professional services teams, we've obviously got finance expertise, wellbeing expertise, data expertise, all of these skills. So by sharing them among each other, we don't need to wait. We don't need to wait. We don't need to wait for HR to develop courses and to have the resources to roll them out. As the point I've just made, all of our staff directly or indirectly shape the culture and environment and have a role to play. And this is something that I really wanted to empower staff to feel they could do. And then finally, we have different, as in all universities, again, there are silos, there are lots of teams identifying the same problems, coming up with solutions, but not necessarily finding the time and space to connect them with each other. So we move forward, Linda. So this was my kind of plan. I felt as coming into the university and with the role that I had, it was something that was in my power to launch, if you like. So I've sat down first of all and kind of thought, okay, I'm going to write out the scope for this the way I see it and draft this. But it was really important that I engaged this wider network to bring this all to life, if you like. So I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but these were my first notes to myself, really. What are the aims of the network that I'm trying to achieve and achieve for staff and fundamentally achieve for students? Who's it aimed at? What is it going to consist of? I did some desk-based research into, what makes a great staff network work, because network's a very broad word and there are lots of different networks. So how do you make one that's really successful and gets off the ground? And then some initial kind of thoughts around the measures of success. And once I got this down, if we move forward, I set up a kind of inaugural conference for the network. And with this, it was really important to make a splash. I was fairly confident that staff would be attracted to coming along because there wasn't something like this that existed at the university. So to say we want to bring professional services staff together to recognise what you do and the impact you have. So we booked the conference centre to run the conference. It was a catered event. I booked an external speaker to give a keynote, which was kind of interesting, but also funny. I really wanted the event to be enjoyable so that everybody would remember it and want to be part of the network. And I also engaged people as they came into the room with some simple kind of survey activity. So as you can see in the kind of snapshots, we asked staff to rate their service based on what they feel they can currently provide by way of a level of quality of service. But then also did some questions around why do you think that is? So what are the best things about the way you work and the impact it can have? And then what are the factors that frustrate you? And I've got no doubt that people would recognise a lot of the words in all of those boxes there as being common across our whole sector. And then finally, looking ahead to how I was going to run the network, I wanted to create a steering group that was drawn from all different grades and all different parts of the university. So I invited people off the back of this first conference to let me know if they would like to join the steering group. And we formed that, and that's made up of, so staff really kind of the lowest administrative grades up to senior managers. And there are about 10 of us on that steering group. Linda.
Yeah. I'm just going to talk you over the next few slides about how the network has since grown and some of the different sessions and events that it has run since its inaugural conference. We're now kind of at a point where we have 5 main pillars or 5 areas of interest. These ideas came from either events and sessions that have been run and the feedback that we've got from staff that attended those, and also the professional services conference that was held at Warwick. We were able to get a lot of information from staff that attended that about what might be useful to them and also useful to students through what they do. And the 5 areas kind of look like this. So we have who are our students. So there was massive interest in finding out particularly about groups of students that perhaps we don't hear a lot about or are not massively represented in the undergraduate kind of first, second, third years. So international students, research students, students with neurodiversity. Second year transitions was also a session that was run. So that was thinking about, it's a lot been talked about the students coming into the university and leaving the university, but that transition from the first year to the second year, where we know that things get a lot more difficult sometimes for students or a lot more intense in terms of their study. And also it might be the point where they're moving off campus. We are a campus-based university, so it's an interesting time for our students. And social class and student experience as well. So all of these sessions are led by people who could offer something of interest in this area, have a bit of an expertise in those areas, and they're able to share that expertise with other professional services staff. And those ones are generally in person. So the other thing we're trying to do is create a bit of variety and flexibility in our events to ensure that people can attend depending on kind of what their job role might be or how easy that is for them. So we have a mix of in-person, hybrid, and online events as well. The Anything You Ever Wanted to Ask About is a really good example of some of the online sessions that we're running. They tend to sit at lunchtime. They're very short. They're usually kind of half an hour, 45-minute sessions. So they usually have a bit of a short presentation where people can switch their screen off and just listen to information about that particular service. It usually services they may impact that student experience quite massively, but we don't know an awful lot about how they work operationally and also how they might connect with some of the other workings across the university as well. And then we have some time for questions in those sessions as well. So they have looked at things such as students, and these are just examples, we do have a few more, but students and mental health. It might be social media. So are we using social media a lot to engage with our students and communicate with our students? But exactly how do we do that and what is the best methods to do that? The residential community team, who have a lot of contact with our students and see them in a very different capacity perhaps than our academics or even our wellbeing team to a certain extent. So being able to find out a little bit about how they work, that's a peer support service at Warwick as well. So thinking we had a student attend that and talk to that service. That was really interesting to hear from them. And the Warwick Innovation District, who work in a very different capacity again. The skills sessions are very much about skills for staff and how they might be able to kind of concentrate on their own development and do some of that CPD. And this allows them to take that time to not only network and meet other colleagues and learn from each other. We're ensuring that these sessions are particularly interactive. We want them to have that capacity to talk to one another as well. But they obviously give that protected time for our staff. So things like active listening, thinking about theory of change and some, coming with a problem that we can identify and how we might, deal with that and how we might look at that through a theory of change lens. Creating student newsletters. It became apparent from another project that we're running that actually quite often staff who create the newsletters, and it's not something they have been skilled in. So this idea of being able to be upskilled through the network was really popular. And then the other kind of pillars that we've got are to take things more broadly. So those were kind of more thinking about who our students are, kind of who our teams and services are, and then thinking about the staff as individuals. And then to take that more broadly in terms of what is going on in the sector, what is going on across the UK and in legislation, and how can we connect those dots and how can we connect the staff with those ideas and that thinking? And that has come through our higher education updates, which we've run hybrid, and they've been incredibly popular. And we've got some numbers in the following slides, but they've looked at kind of the current political landscape, but also the regulatory landscapes, thinking of the OFS, the QAA. Also post-16 education skills and white paper. And we've got some coming up also in the student funding. So quite often we have an external speaker that will come into those as well as somebody from Warwick, so they can talk about that as a collective and think about how Warwick is connected to those external ideas. And then our staff can see themselves in those spaces as well. And then finally, the last kind of area is thinking about their career. So quite often professional services staff, they're not on the same schemes as perhaps academic staff in terms of promotion and its a natural progression in those ways and where they might go. So the idea here is they learn about other careers in the higher education sector and where they might want to go, but also get some of those practical skills, so the interview techniques and CV writing and those sorts of things as well. And generally they're in person and again, have been incredibly popular. So some of our session examples, I won't go through all of this, but this is, so for example, this is from our international students who are our students session. So we had about 70 attendees, but quite one of the things I wanted to highlight was the many different departments that attend these. So we had 29 different departments that attended this who are our students. So that's allowing that information to kind of be disseminated across the institution quite easily in what we think is a fun and interactive way. These sessions here are thinking about the residential community team. So an online one, as I said, very short. So 28 attendees, so a bit of a smaller number, but still 14 different departments, finding out a little bit more from students and from staff about what do they do, how are they supporting their students, and they can then give that information to students if and when it's needed as well, which I think is really important for our students in terms of having that compassionate response. Higher education, much bigger, obviously, hybrid, 145 attendees, but 50 different departments attended that particular session that we ran on the political landscape. And again, a really good way of getting that information through to all different areas of the university. The theory of change, which is more about the skills, was 30 attendees from 20 different departments. And as I said, the developing your career, always popular in terms of progression. So 117 attendees, but 36 different departments. So a real variety of people attending and engaging with the network and the things that we're offering. And just as an example of that, I've kind of highlighted in this slide. This is taken from one of the career sessions that we did with 117 attendees. And in blue are those academic departments, people who represented the academic departments. So 41% of those came from academic departments. So although this is the Professional Services Excellence Network, we're seeing those professional services people within departments as well as in central services. So really a good way of us breaking down some of those silos and having those conversations about how our roles may do a similar thing, but work in different ways, so how we can bring those people together. And I think just the last slide from me, but this is probably one of the biggest things in the way I think that we impact through the network for staff at the university. So giving that space and having that opportunity for people to share their views and suggestions, doesn't matter what grade or role they are in, but I think quite often some of these staff that I speak to haven't felt that confidence perhaps in speaking in other spaces. Where talking in those rooms and in those sessions, in those events where everybody's there for the same reason, they feel much more able to kind of share their views and to feel like they're in the room and have that information that perhaps they wouldn't necessarily get in a different part of their role. But also it gives them that confidence and knowledge of the university and its practices and the way it works to take that back into their departments and use that within their role as well. I've already touched on the connecting central services and department services as well as one of the other areas we impact. But more specifically, I think some of the things that have come out of the network are quite incredible. So one of the new things that we're going through at the moment is launching of a shadowing scheme. So this is enabling staff to kind of discover the different roles, career possibilities that are available across the university. So there are people, it's quite a simple model, but the idea is that people will volunteer their time, whether that be a day in the life, or perhaps it's just a committee meeting or something like that, that people can shadow. They advertise that, and people who would like to learn a little bit more and to develop in shadow in that way can go along and match themselves to those particular roles. And we're starting a pilot on that, which we're hoping will be able to disseminate across the entire university as it grows. Networking, I'd say, is one of the other more specific areas. So just a quote, not from me, but the network gives us a space to share ideas and innovations. We're all working hard and doing so much, but not sharing very well, was a quote that we had. And I think that kind of sums it up. Having this ability and this time to really share exactly what we do and bring everybody together is kind of the pivotal and the basics of what we're trying to achieve within the network itself. And one thing just quickly to mention, sorry, I'm short on time, but quickly to mention is that a lot of this is underpinned. So it's not just the events and the sessions that we have, but we have an incredibly active team site, which the network kind of comes out of. And that has lots of different channels within it. And just to kind of make you aware of what we're doing in that space is there is a general channel. And just over the last month, so when I wrote these slides a couple of weeks ago, between March and then, there'd been 21 different posts, and not from us and not from the central team that are creating the network, but just from people who are a member of that network will go on there and they will post different training opportunities, different events that they are offering in their own spaces, different volunteering or development opportunities that might be available to others across the university. So really sharing that knowledge and really bringing people together, and general news items as well. People go on there and kind of let people know things. There is, as I said, other channels within it. So thinking about that knowledge exchange, internal and external practice. So less probably posts per month, but still 2 or 3, so very active, still being used all of the time. And that focuses more on kind of those new projects across the institution or any queries people might have. They might go on there and ask a question about practice in other areas of the university, so they can use and collaborate with other colleagues that they may never normally have had the ability to connect with. And those different leadership opportunities as well that might be present. And there's another area about career development. So any job opportunities that might come up and vacancies can be posted on there and let people know. So a really active community, which I think demonstrates just how needed and wanted this network has been. And I'll pass you back to Adele.
I'll whip through this. So it's really to comment on evaluation and feedback approach and where we are with it. So the evaluation of the network ultimately needs to be what impact is this having on the student experience, and it's remembering that's what it's about. So, and that's why it's obviously on the staff experience, but the staff experience for the student experience. So the measures we have in place, which are not quite at that, but along the way, are clearly, are people coming? Are they interested? And the attendance numbers are very strong. They range between kind of minimum of 30 up to 140 across the events. The breadth of departments Linda's talked through, it's consistently very strong. Repeat attendance turned out to be rather a null kind of measure because people come to things that interest them and they can't come to everything. So as a reflection, that wasn't necessarily a meaningful measure when we looked at it. The growth of the network, important. So we're now at kind of 500 plus on the Teams site, and it's grown. It's very strong, and new people joining all the time. The question we ask the same questions of every event, which you can see there. And generally, with the Likert goes from not at all through to definitely, and we're generally in the kind of 4 and 5 scores of definitely for most events. The second, I met new people I intend to collaborate with, that can be a bit lower because sometimes the activities don't really give that opportunity, particularly, for example, hybrid talks and so on. But these are strong measures of satisfaction with the network. So as I say, where we are really is. And our next thing to do is the network's been running for kind of a good 2.5 years now, is to go out and get those case studies back from people to jog their memory about what they've attended and see if we can gather that evidence of what have they done with it, what difference has it made. And then the absolute final slide, sorry, take up the time. Recommendations, if you're interested, I would just say, just get started. It's very much a kind of organic boots on the ground kind of network. If you can run that initial conference and invite staff in, everybody is welcome and the energy really comes from them. Having a steering group where, again, whoever wants to be part of it, mixture of grades has really kind of kept us grounded as to what is important and what interests different people and what will land with their peers. They can then obviously take on the responsibility for helping set up the sessions and so on. I've jumped to the 5th point, which is around, we've tried to, as many universities here may have been kind of asked to do, try to diminish some of the internal catering for them, but it does make a big difference if you can offer a cup of tea and coffee to how people feel, and that what is networking if you haven't got a cup of coffee in your hand. So that's something that we kind of strayed away from, but we've brought back in again. And then the very last point is there is a need for some support, so that we certainly don't have any dedicated person or resource on a salary band to run this, but without somebody keeping an eye on things, getting the comms out, making the room bookings, thinking about the refreshments, we would be at sea. So that internal team support is really vital. Thank you.
Adele and Linda, thank you very much for that. Really, really interesting. We unfortunately don't have time for questions. There was loads and loads of depth in what you were talking about. So thank you very much. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities to connect with Adele and Linda should you want to do that. We are going to jump straight over now to Jen. Is it just you presenting, or have you got a colleague with you?
Yeah, it's just me here today. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Jen from BPP, who is going to talk to us about co-agency in practice. Jen, without any more, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just trying to share my slides and it's having a slight moment. Bear with me, sorry. It's not enjoying the presenting. Oh, of course it's not going to present in Teams. We're not in Teams. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I totally forgot we weren't in Teams and I'm using up valuable time here. Hopefully this will work. Hang on. I was on another planet.
That's looking promising.
No, it's not.
Yes, no, we can see. We just can't see it in. We can see something.
Sorry. Everyone else did so well at this today.
Everyone is watching, going, I'm
Oh
glad that's not
no.
me because it will be me tomorrow.
No idea where I'm going to have my notes now. Sorry.
I can share the slides if you want, Jen, and you can sort of just tell me when to say next slide.
Okay, if you're happy to. Sorry, I'm really not sure why I'm having so much trouble. Thank you, David.
That's absolutely fine.
All right.
Cool. Is that up for everyone?
Yes,
Perfect.
that's there. Jen, over to you.
Thank you. Luckily, my timing was on the lower side, so hopefully I'll claw back some time for us, Fiona. So thank you very much for joining us for this presentation this afternoon, at this point in the afternoon. I'm sharing how co-agency amongst our tutors and coaches is helping build belonging and transformation in the way that we work and enhance learning for our apprentices. So I'm Jennifer Maynard, I'm the Head of Training and Development at the School of Technology at BPP University, and I'm presenting work on behalf of myself and my colleague Minal Shingadia, who's a coaching performance manager. So over the next 10 minutes, maybe slightly less, I'll walk you through who we are, what we do, where we were, what we've introduced, and the transformation that's already taking place. And then I'll talk a little bit about where we're heading next, which has from today been largely influenced by the idea of the heroes. So thank you very much for that, Zach and Lee. So many of you won't know who BPP University is. We're a non-traditional university with an emphasis on professional education in fields such as law, business, finance, technology, and also healthcare. Within the School of Technology, we deliver integrated technology apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships. So our learners are studying and working for an apprenticeship whilst working for an organisation as well. So our learners have a coach throughout their programme as well as their more traditional studies. And the coach is sort of similar to the role of a personal tutor. Next slide, thank you. So what are degree apprenticeships? They're work-based university programs where learners can earn a BSc whilst developing real-world skills in the workplace. And our learners progress from a level 4 through to a level 6 over about 4.5 years studying with us, learning flexibly online and through live and recorded content. And assessment is a mix of coursework, workplace projects, portfolio work, preparing apprentices for roles like software engineers, business analysts, data analysts, or perhaps a cybersecurity analyst even. So on the next slide, I'll just talk very quickly about the differences between, or the roles of the tutors and coaches. And I give this to add context so that you understand the collaboration activities that we've been doing. So a degree apprenticeship coach plays a pivotal role in guiding apprentices through the unique blend of academic study and workplace learning. Their responsibilities span coaching, mentoring, monitoring, and motivating to ensure that our apprentices thrive both professionally and academically. They work really closely with the employers as well to bring better alignment with the workplace tasks and the academic goals, and they hold structured progress reviews with their learners as well and prepare learners for their final assessments. I'll skip a little bit through some of the other responsibilities of the coaches and jump to how our tutors work. So our tutor role centres around the academic teaching and assessment, and our assessments are generally virtual, and our tutors are industry specialists who ensure that our content always stays current and applicable, certainly in the world of tech where it's constantly moving. Our tutors mark assignments, supervise projects, give feedbacks for academic progress. And all of our tutors are module leads, which gives real agency to own content when it comes to content enhancement. So I'll talk now about where we were before we introduced our little initiative. So before we started making changes, we already had strong foundations for teamwork, both within the coaching and the teaching teams. So we had peer coaching, peer teaching, and well-established practices, supported by regular shadowing and observations, included cross-school observations as well, so with other schools within the university, which allowed tutors and coaches to see colleagues in action across different subject areas, which broadens perspectives and strengthens shared practice. We also had an inclusive practice handbook, which was designed to guide both tutors and coaches in embedding inclusive practice across every aspect of their delivery. New tutors and coaches benefited from kind of robust peer buddy systems through their onboarding, and so that they felt kind of supported from the outset. And then beyond this structured development, we also have a strong social culture within the school, which is driven by a social kind of culture club, which we're working virtually or remotely. And so having this community and sense of belonging is really, really important. So that created a nice environment for all of these particular people that we're talking about today to come together and connect informally as well. So now I'm just going to talk about what we were missing on the next slide. Thank you very much, David. So despite the strengths that we had, we noticed gaps. We sometimes gave mixed messages and occasionally also missed messages that we were intending to get to learners, miscommunicating things with them entirely. And some students also experienced support gaps. There was a lack of clarity around roles, which made it hard to drive consistent change. And we were seeing this impact through things such as an NSS below benchmark, an NPS of less than -50, and complaints and learner retention risks, including in the apprenticeship world, a major risk that a client can take their apprentices to another provider, just simply withdraw them from the program, and they're fully entitled to do so. So this is really important that we address these gaps. So next slide, I talk a little bit about the rationale for our approach. We knew that real change was needed and the buy-in was really going to be needed for that. Research shows that collaborative knowledge exchange activities create much stronger engagement. And we also knew that we had a great practice happening across the team already, and peer knowledge sharing is one of the most effective ways to spread it. So we launched, in the next slide, I'll talk about how we've launched 3 yearly collaborative workshops. We call them collabs. And these workshops bring together tutors and coaches, bring them together to identify challenges and co-design solutions. So the aim was quite simple, to create a shared space to innovate, problem solve, and enhance program delivery in line with company values. So the outputs of some of these sessions were things such as team group chats, like cohort group chats, a who's who for the school, which sounds like quite a small thing, but actually working virtually was incredibly important, and also for our learners to be able to see that as well. Coach and tutor bios for the learners, and a learner FAQ, referencing workbooks, and these are all simple and quite, on the face of it, sound quite small, but really high impact solutions that came directly from the people doing the work rather than from a top-down approach. On the next slide, I'll talk a bit about where we are now. So as a result of some of these peer collaboration opportunities that we've plugged into our day-to-day, the team are motivated. They work together on projects that align to company and school level aims and values. The feeling of team has boosted morale, and there's a real sense of positivity and excitement for what we can achieve together as we grow. This excitement is quite contagious, actually, and it's seeping into facets of delivery, and our learners are feeling it as well. So qualitative feedback from our learners is at an all-time low. No, it's not at an all-time low, it's at a high. We have proactive feedback for supervisors, which is a real joy to read. And we've seen a great growth in engagement with extracurricular wraparound sessions such as masterclasses, podcasts, LinkedIn engagement, registration for events such as National Apprenticeship Week. And we also run a virtual research conference where we invite students to present and our alumni as well. So I already mentioned some of the tangible examples or the outputs from some of these sessions, but just to illustrate it a tiny bit, in one of these group chats, cohort chats that I mentioned, one of the tutors said, my learner doesn't understand this part of the assessment, and another tutor can then see that and respond to the learner, but also adapt their next session to kind of address that misconception for that particular cohort and for future cohorts. And in another group chat, a coach mentioned that a learner wasn't responding. A tutor said that they've not been engaging in class either. So through outreach to that particular learner, they were able to disclose that they had a need for support. So it kind of created this opportunity for different people to come together and be able to identify issues with learners that we might otherwise not have recognised. This really is an example of how change sticks. This particular one, the use of cohort chats, we had tried to implement this before, but it had failed, again, through this top-down approach. But where the idea came out of a collaboration session with the people on the ground, it became a success. It had the buy-in and it worked. So these outputs have measurable impact. So we're seeing this in the NSS, the P-test, NPS scores have also increased. And attainment and retention are also improved, and some up 40% higher on some courses. So next slide, please. Thank you, David. These approaches reflect emerging research that highlights the role of collaborative leadership structures in driving student engagement, belonging, and academic success. So by modelling mutual respect, co-creation, and shared decision-making, our tutors and coaches help cascade change throughout learning environments. They support the broader challenge of leading for transformation, and how leadership practices and structures can drive deep systemic change across teams and institutional layers. The collaboration sessions create a space where tutors and coaches move from working in parallel to working in a genuine partnership. And the tutors and coaches build a deeper relationship and connections by understanding one another's roles, their pressures, and their strengths. And this dissolves the silos that we've heard a lot about today and fosters a sense of shared purpose. So the sessions encourage curiosity through open questioning, reflective dialogue, and a willingness to explore new approaches. So through these collaborations, staff are empowered. The sessions spark meaningful conversation, and they drive what I deem to be sustainable change within our school. The joined up thinking has strengthened the tutor-coach partnerships and has elevated learner success and outcomes. So on the next slide, I just talk really briefly about where we're going. So in upcoming sessions, we've got lots of different themes that we want to discuss, all of which are voted for by the teams themselves. So we know some of the challenges that we have in the school, and we put these different themes to vote for the tutors and coaches to say, yes, let's address this particular theme. We all have something to say about this. Let's move forward with that. And one of those is focusing on assessment and feedback. So that will be soon. And embedding peer shadowing is something that we want to do a lot more of. So we're sharing that really good practice and understanding. I think somebody talked earlier about the importance of shadowing and doing the day in the life of, and understanding the different roles across the business. And also sharing this collaboration model with other schools across BPP as well. I think we've heard a lot today about how lots of people are doing wonderful things across different institutions in silo. And so we want to kind of open up the opportunity for different schools to do this too, and perhaps also then do a combined collaboration as well across schools. And then just finally, from the session that we had this morning on heroes, it's really sparked me wanting to perhaps look at not only doing this with tutors and coaches, to actually look at our operational team and other members within the school and see who else might have something to add into the mix that might help us look at things from a different perspective. So thank you for that. We'll definitely be looking into that. And feel free to connect with myself or Manel if you've got any questions. Thank you, Fiona.
Great. Jen, thank you very much. I think that's a really interesting presentation, bringing together those different groups. I like the way that you linked it to that hero session earlier. I think it'd be really interesting to see what you can do with that if you're bringing additional skill sets and mindsets into those groups as well. I don't think we have really time for questions, unfortunately. But colleagues, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. And a huge thank you to Jen for that session as well. And here we go. A huge thank you is coming your way. So, colleagues, what we're doing now is we've got a 5-minute transition period. And we're going to end up in two Zoom rooms. So you can either stay in here, and in here we have 3 very short lightning talks. So they're 5-minute talks each. And in the other Zoom room, Zoom 2, there are going to be 2 what we're calling Thunderbolt talks, which are probably a bit more controversial than the lightning talks, or that's the idea of them. So feel free to decide to stay here or to shuffle across to the other parallel session, and we'll be starting again in 5 minutes' time.